My guest today is John Rivera. From DJ in the 90s to huge success with Sony Disco's label, John has found immense success in the music industry. But our episode today is not about John. It's about his son, Cristian, and what he's doing for other children through his legacy. After Cristian tragically passed away in 2009, John was inspired to start the Cristian Rivera Foundation, a New Jersey-based nonprofit.
In 2007, when he was diagnosed, there was very few treatment options. Today, there's a slew of treatment options. Sadly, we're still at 2% survival rate. It used to be 0. But there is progress. And when my son was diagnosed, the top medical geniuses said that I would not see a cure in my lifetime. That's no longer the case. They say a cure is just at our doorstep. But there's also other obstacles that we're fighting other than the actual disease and the lack of funding.
Do you want to hint on some of those obstacles? Because now you got me curious.
The institutions that our two medical partners work for at times try to discourage our doctors because they're saying, hey, listen, even if you find a cure, there's only 200 patients. How much money can we make from this?
Yes, I know that very clear.
You know, they look at it from a business standpoint, and everything that we do, we look at it from a human standpoint. We raised over $1 million this year, but to really make an impact, we have to start raising $3 million. And that's the goal, is to get to that level.
If you were to leave the audience with one key takeaway from this conversation, what would you want to tell the audience?
DIPG and any other childhood or pediatric type of illnesses are just not acceptable. It's not natural to bury your child.
Welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues. I'm your host, Ali Horiat. My goal in this program is to educate our audience about various global issues and how we can help. My guest today is John Rivera from the Castle Hill section of the Bronx, New York. From early on, he fell in love with music, particularly because it brought his family together. From DJ in the 90s to huge success with Sony Disco's label, John has found immense success in the music industry and has since passionately spread love globally through music. But our episode today is not about John. It's about his son, Cristian, and what he's doing for other children through his legacy. After Cristian tragically passed away in 2009, John was inspired to start the Cristian Rivera Foundation, a New Jersey-based nonprofit. John says, I started the Cristian Rivera Foundation because no parent should have to bury their child, let alone watch them suffer a horrific death at the hands of a DIPG tumor. John, hello. Welcome to Compassiviste. I'm doing well. I wish I could have interviewed you about music and a lot more lighter topics, but here we are today. We're going to talk about Cristian.
Awesome.
The Cristian Rivera Foundation was born out of a deeply personal loss. Could you share what inspired you to turn this loss and painful experience into a mission of hope and action, and what it brings to you?
When my son was first diagnosed, I was very optimistic, although there was a 0% chance of survival. You know, we always think that we're the exception to the rule. So I felt very confident that, you know, my resources, and I hired a research team to look for alternative treatments. And I would see the parents that were going for their regular visits. And after their child was first diagnosed, I would see a lot of hope in their eyes. And after a few months, I would see those same parents look so drained, so distraught, that change in their face made me realize I'm up for a real tough battle here, right? And then watching the children suffer as much as they do, the suffering is undescribable. I mean, Eventually they can't walk, they can't talk, they can't move any part of their body, they can't eat, swallow, and eventually their heart stops. They can't even breathe on their own towards the end of their life. And, watching anybody, let alone a kid, go through that evolution of deterioration is just undescribable. So when my son passed away, I decided that I wanted to help. And that's how the foundation was birthed.
It is a very difficult space to be through. I don't wish it on anybody, and I don't wish anybody to even be associated with it. I twice was in this situation supporting friends, very close, dear friends of mine who lost their children.
Oh my
And
God.
yes, it is very difficult. I cannot imagine what you went through. I cannot imagine how hard it is, but being there and seeing myself not be able to show up some days. I'd go to Sick Kids Hospital and I'd get to the stairs to walk in and I'd break down because this child was very close to me, and it was very, very difficult for me to, even now, it's difficult to talk about it. And it, it takes a lot to, you're always grieving because, it's not something that leaves, but it takes a lot to channel some of that into some kind of positivity, some kind of reversal in a sense, to say, you know what, I'm going to do something through Christian to make a difference. Now, I want to start here, and I want to say, give us what you think makes that difference for parents who are going through this. Like you said, from parents who get this, horrible news at the beginning, and they're optimistic, and then they go through the phases, and then, the last stage comes along, and it's the most devastating. How do you get through there all the way to where you are now doing what you're doing now?
Hope. In 2007, when he was diagnosed, there was very few treatment options. Today, there's a slew of treatment options. Sadly, we still only have, we're still at 2% survival rate. It used to be 0. I'll take 2 over 0 any day, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there is progress. And when my son was diagnosed, the top medical geniuses said that I would not see a cure in my lifetime. That's no longer the case. They say a cure is just at our doorstep. So it's about constant research, constant funding. This tumor is not a very easy tumor to find a cure for, because we once biopsied 30 tumors. You can't really biopsy a tumor safely, but 30 tumors were biopsied, and only 6 were made of the same cell makeup. So you don't even know what you're fighting. You have to treat it on a case-by-case basis and hope that the chemo agent that worked for someone works for another person. So I call it the tumor from hell. Only 200 kids are diagnosed each year with this. And there's about 6 survivors a year, Like I said, it's all about hope. And if you see progress, it's like, you want to lose a certain amount of weight, but then you see that you lost 1 pound and then you go to 3 pounds. That hope fuels you even more.
When you talk about the hope of it, that's the social part of it. That's the collective part of it. That's the community part of it. And there's another kind of hope that is the medical hope, that is the cure hope, that is the science hope, right?
Mm-hmm.
I see generally in the world, I didn't know what diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma. Am I saying it right? I think so.
Yeah, glioma.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I still don't know what that is, in depth. I read about it. I looked at it. And there isn't even that much about it, but
it's a diffuse. It's in the pons. Diffuse intrinsic pontine is the type of tumor in the pons. It's a glioma in the pons. So pontine glioma. It's in the pons. It's a glioma. Glioma is the worst type of brain tumor.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's in the pond and all the nerves are intertwined, you can't operate. You kill a child instantaneously.
And when you go for finding a cure, when you go to raise money for this, when you go to raise awareness for this, from the medical, say, political perspective of things, how difficult is it to say, I want to raise money for this, I want some science, finding a cure for this, when, as you say, it's a very rare case, it's a very rare disease. There's about 200 kids that get affected by it. And then you have all these other, conditions that have thousands or millions who are affected, who the state or the governments or whoever is paying for the funding is putting money towards that. So how difficult is it for you to actually bring awareness to this?
It is difficult. I've been very fortunate in my career. I've owned a label with Sony. I was the exclusive concert producer at the Madison Square Garden for 9.5 years for Hispanic events. I produce hip hop and Latin concerts all over the world. I've owned 6 nightclubs, restaurants. I've had a great marketing firm. I've represented a lot of actors and agents, and athletes rather. So what makes our approach a little different is I have a huge circle. Mm-hmm. And so my circle cares. Just like you cared about those 2 children that you were close to. You behaved differently than a stranger that learned about that child because it's personal to you. Mm-hmm. My people take a personal approach to this mission because they either knew my son or knew about my son. So that's the advantage that I have. Now, let's suppose I didn't have that advantage. The other great thing that we have is we have 2 of the most brilliant minds in medicine that are our medical partners. Mm. They're top of their field. And then lastly, and not least, we have survivors. So it's show and proof, Hey, I can get a car to fly. And then you show it to them. They're like, I'm investing, mm-hmm. It may be 1 car out of 1,000 tries, mm-hmm. but 1 worked. So they know it's possible, and mm-hmm. they're going to channel their hope, energy into that possibility instead of the failures.
That is very true as well. And I can tell you, we have this concept at Compassiviste that came through one of the people on board, and it's called the philanthropic heart. And the idea behind that is, you connect with people's misfortunes that or that you've been through more than, like you said, strangers. So in a sense, you've been blessed with a community that is, tight, they care, they're there for you, and they're able to support you in many ways in the research. So I can see that supports the growth of it. Now, do you find that while you're raising funding through your foundation, that you're able to make a difference in the progress of this, coming in to support this? Are you seeing the changes?
100%. We get no federal funding, so mm-hmm. The lab is fueled by family support, family foundations. And when you're able to give almost $500,000 a year, you could hire another researcher. There's so much that you could do. On top of that, we don't just fund research. We assist families that are going through a tough time, because when your child's diagnosed, you can't work anymore. You can't have a normal life. So we offer family support as well. And then we do things like, it's called our Dreams Come True initiative, where we grant these children an impossible request, whether it's to meet a certain celebrity or travel to a certain part of the world that they want to go to. And we make all that possible.
Kind of like Make a Wish Foundation.
Exactly.
Something very similar to that. Yeah. I used to be a part of that, so I know how that works. And
They do amazing work.
yeah, they do amazing work. Not only that, at first when I got involved, and this is something that I want you to talk about a little, maybe for the audience. When I first got involved, I thought that's a lot of money we're throwing away just for a child to go, for example, to the Super Bowl and meet Tom Brady. And when I realized the effect that had and how the child changes and even sometimes, this went from literally almost being on their deathbed to being alive for those days, looking forward to the whole hope of going and seeing this dream come true. And then coming back and going back to that stage changed everything for me. How are you seeing the help that you're providing to families really kick in for the families that need this kind of help? Give them hope, give them give them the emotion and the feeling that money doesn't matter at this moment. Just take care of your own, be there, deal with your situation.
It's one less burden that they have to worry about. Their mortgage, their rent, their phone bill, their car payment, car insurance, putting food on the table. Those are things that we take for granted. And those are things that they had never experienced a struggle with. They have enough to worry about with their child than to have to worry about the basic necessities.
And you come in and you take care of that for them as well.
Yeah,
through
absolutely.
your fund.
But also we're a support team. Like, I deliver care packages, or I take the dad out, who's putting on this strong front. And now he's out to dinner with me, and now he could really open up and vent because he knows I went through it and he doesn't fear looking like a weak person. And we get the moms a spa day or do something nice for them. I mean, listen, the mental anguish that families go through is undescribable. And the suffering that the child goes through is undescribable. If we can just lighten up things, even if it's just a little bit, everything helps. You know that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I know that for sure.
When you visited the children, those two kids.
Yes. It's very different. And you know what? That's when I really cared to be involved in many different ways with so many of these support groups that you know what, when you're wealthy, you don't realize how much that little bit of money that you don't care about means in the scope of what you can do in terms of bringing that every day to the hospital. I remember there was a guy, he used to be a clown for events. And on his days that he didn't have bookings or anything like that, or even days that he had half bookings, he would show up. Out of the goodness of his heart, he'd show up and he'd just, have his suit on and everything, come in, make the kids laugh and all those things. And, this is leukemia. I mean, it's a difficult space. And he would leave, and one time I was leaving and I saw him walk out, changed and everything, and walk out. And he was standing there waiting for the bus. And this is, you're in New York, I was in Toronto, you can appreciate the weather in January. He's coming through all of that and taking a bus, So one day I said to him, I said, what does it take for you to come here and make these people laugh all the time, make these people happy all the time? And I can come more often, come, more steadily. And he told me he was making about $2,500 a month. And at that time, I was running the second largest fund in the country before I quit everything and started Compassiviste. To me, $2,500 was lunch. So,
Right.
I was thinking to myself, what am I doing? What am I doing?
It was a dinner at Danielle's or a dinner.
Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's not to brag, but it's to say the opposite. It's to say, what am I doing? Because that can make a whole floor of kids every hour happy, laugh and smile. And then what else can I do? And how else can I support? And what else can I bring to the table? And so a lot shifted. Instead of the Gucci store, it became sick kids, to the point, that I got involved, and it made a huge difference. And I saw how you can impact, and that's why I really tell a lot of people I know, you want to find something that is better than retail therapy. You want to find something that is better than I don't know, gambling or whatever it is you're doing to take the edge off. Go to a hospital, go to the children's ward, and look at what's going on there, and look at how much your little bit can do that you were just blowing steam off with. And I think it's really important to be able to do that. And then for people who have not that much money, give your $10, give your $5, because those add up. I tell people, don't think about you as $5. Think about, you're in New York. Think about 8 million people who come into Manhattan. Think everybody who comes in, pays $1. That pays John's entire Find a Cure. That's how you got to look at it. Now, speaking of that, I mean, if you were able to raise all the money you need, where are you in terms of recent developments and in terms of, getting to the cure? Because earlier in the conversation, you said we're at the doorstep of cure.
So, yeah, good question. So our medical partner, Dr. Mark Swedane, is rolling out something that was finally FDA approved. The FDA sits on things sometimes for years. So we're on phase 2. Phase 1 was extremely successful. And we're rolling something out that we feel is going to be a giant step. But more than just being a giant step, is going to be very affordable. So our foundation could easily help treat additional children.
Okay. And
insurance companies don't cover any of this stuff, so it becomes so trying,
Yes, that is one thing for sure. Now, when you speak about reaching, the FDA approval and rolling this out and making it feasible for families, what are your targets in terms of raising money? What are you looking at?
When you say targets, can you?
Yeah, like every month, what do you look to raise in the ideal world, or every year, however you do your numbers?
Well, we've had our best year thus far. We raised over $1 million this year. But to really make an impact, we have to start raising 3 million. And that's the goal, is to get to that level. Every year we raise more. So that's a good sign.
Right.
It's a snowball effect. There's going to be that one year that the jump is very high. Mm-hmm. It's like anything, right? Like in sales, you are coasting along and you have like a 10% increase per year. And then all of a sudden there's that one year that you have a 200% increase because the product starts becoming so reputable and, and there's more of demand for it. So in our case, I think our foundation each year becomes more and more reputable and bigger names are starting to support us. And eventually sky's the limit. And we're going to bring in a director this year. We've never done that. And hopefully the director will focus on corporate grants, which are so helpful. These grants range from $2,500 to $100,000. So if we can tap into that, then that's another stream of revenue that we weren't used to or accustomed to receiving.
You know what? You say $3 million and it sounds like a big number, but really, it's not a big number.
With something that you were playing with in 1 hour. I mean, a lot could be done, and it will be done.
Yes, that's what I always tell people. Don't look at those numbers and think of them as impossible or unreachable. Just think about how we have paid towards millions and millions so far in cures and where we are today in the world, and how things have changed because of our donations, because of our support, because of the people who do the work that they do. So it's not about looking at things and thinking, $5 million. I'm not giving my $10 to this organization because, where are they going to raise the other $4,999? It's impossible. No, if you think that everybody's thinking like you, then you just raised it by pitching in. So, it's important to think that way. It's important to think in the collective. Now, I'm going to ask you this. What lessons from the foundation's work can inform how healthcare systems approach rare diseases with greater support for patients and families? Because, like you said earlier, insurance companies don't cover this. And there are countries with universal healthcare and there are countries without. I mean, the US is the only developed country without universal healthcare. But I'll also say this because I know the Canadian healthcare system inside out. It isn't all roses when they say you have universal healthcare. I mean, there are things that aren't covered. There are things that require, 2 days technology and medication that aren't given to you in universal healthcare. So you got to fly out of the country. A lot of people who could afford it used to go to the U.S. to get treatments that you couldn't get in Canada at the time. So, in a sense, how does your work relate to the government, the healthcare ministry, and all of that in terms of changing the way they approach diseases?
There is no synergy. I don't deal with healthcare companies. The government doesn't give us grants. There's zero connection. I wish I could tell you differently, but there isn't. I just put my head down and keep going straight forward and privately raise the funds that we need to make the progress that we're making, in hopes that one day a Mark Zuckerberg or a Bill Gates shows interest, or a former president or current president shows interest and says, hey, this is something that I want to put funds behind. It's something that should be done.
Something that, as a president, I want to make policy, or as a politician, doesn't have to be a president, as a politician who can bring that to the table, to the Senate.
It starts at Congress,
Right. That's what I mean. Somebody who can bring the file to Congress and say, look, we need to take a look at this. That's one way of looking at it. And, the Mark Zuckerberg route, it helps. But at the end of the day, there's only so much gas in those vehicles as well. I mean, there have been numerous times that grants for research for many projects have been left dry because they funded it privately for a long time, and then it kind of like just fell off the hill for them, and then it just.
But even if it's funded for a short period of time, so much could
it supports. It supports, and it gets you up on the hill, and that's where policy needs to kick in. That's where the government needs to say, okay, there's so much behind this. We need to come in and kind of give this some kind of respect and some kind of value.
The research that's being done by our two medical partners is very no nonsense. There's a lot of volunteer work associated with it. It's almost like, going abroad to a mission, whether it's treating children who are sick in Zimbabwe or feeding the hungry in India or Cambodia. We treat it very streamlined. Everything is accounted for. Everything is really carefully spent because we know that every little bit matters. So getting a Zuckerberg or Gates or someone of that magnitude, you can make a big difference. Listen, if you want to build a beautiful home in your town and you only hire 2 people to build it, they'll be there for a while. But if you hire a crew of 12, then that house is going to be built in 6 months.
And you know what? I brought something to the nonprofit, so to speak, world from my old world. And in my old world, I used to fund a lot of startups, and I used to put a lot of money into places people didn't dare to. And one of the ways that I studied this was exit strategies. I would always ask a person, I love the story, I love the presentation, the graphics are beautiful, everything's beautiful. You had music in there, it was a whole show. It wasn't a presentation. I love it. But after all of this is said and done, I still want to see numbers. I want to see my exit strategy, right? And I brought that with me to this world that I'm in right now. And I said, I don't want to be the guy who has a foundation that's proud about celebrating its 100th year. Because unless you're in emergency relief like the Red Cross, there's nothing to brag about. It just means that for 100 years, you've been kind of like not being able to resolve the issue, right? So I want to ask you this. How do you see this kind of working out for you? How do you see yourself reaching that exit strategy, finding a cure, putting that cure on the shelf, walking into a pharmacy one day and saying, I did that. Christian did that. That cure there, sitting right there, that people come and buy a vial and go home, and their kid can now see their 18th birthday and get married, and they can see their grandkids. All of that was because Christian.
Right. So unlike other diseases or unlike other business plans, right? We can't really give you a solid exit strategy because the progress is so unknown that it would be very, very misleading for me to say, in 10 years, we're done. That's not true. We could be done next year, but then again, we could be done in 20 years. I'm going to send you a video of our last gala in November, and I'd be honored for you to attend next year. Bridget and Sydney were attending. They attended the gala. And Kenan Thompson, who is the longest running castmate on SNL, said, this cause is very personal to me. I knew Christian. And, but I do look forward to the day where the gala is a celebration of a cure.
Mm.
He says that every single year in hopes that he motivates armies to get involved, because it's the only thing stopping us from a cure is funding. That's the truth.
And that question came to me because of what you said. You said you want to build a house. You bring 2 people in, they're there for years. You bring 12 people in, they're out in 6 months. And you bring 12 people who build homes, they're out in 3 months. It just gets better and better. So in your case, the thing is funding, because you have the best team of doctors. You have a foundation that is working with no friction. It's transparent.
Behind the scenes obstacles that I'm not really privy to talk about. But there's also other obstacles that we're fighting other than the actual disease and the lack of funding.
Do you want to hint on some of those obstacles? Because now you got me curious.
The institutions that our 2 medical partners work for at times try to discourage our doctors because they're saying, hey, listen, even if you find a cure, there's only 200 patients. How much money can we make from this?
Yes, I know that. I know that very clear.
So,
and I can understand that.
They look at it from a business standpoint, and everything that we do, we look at it from a human standpoint.
John, I had a client back in the days. He had a daughter, and the daughter fell off a horse, and she was paralyzed. And he single-handedly found the cure, the medication, the equipment, everything. He funded it single-handedly to be able to have the surgery to fix her spine again so she can walk, right? Took about 3 years of time. She's back on a horse. And the reason that happened is exactly what you said. Because he is in that Mark Zuckerberg realm, and it was his daughter, he was able to fund every penny of that research, like a James Bond movie. There was this secret space. I've never been there, but people who've been there have told me it's a lab. It's an actual building that was built for this purpose, and everything happened in there. The whole research happened in there. He gave away about 1/6 of his wealth for this. It was a very, very expensive situation.
I'd give 100%.
Yes. He didn't need to give 100. I'm just saying he gave a sixth of it because that's all it took, right? But I'm saying he was able to fund that and have his life and fund that and be able to get that cure. And had it not been for his financial capacity, the cure, this would have never been found. Now, after that incident, they're using this to help other people, recover. And he never sold it. He never sold the patent. He never sold any of it to any of the, giant pharmas or anybody else, because he said, no, if I sell it, it's just going to turn into another one of those $1 million cures. I'd rather just let people come to our foundation and tell us this is what we're going through. Let our doctors assess them. If they qualify, come here for the, it's an 18-month program and we'll see what we can do. And they actually do that now. And they're in Switzerland and in South Korea and they do that. So I understand fully what you're saying. And as soon as I read about DIPG and the numbers, I thought to myself, oh boy, it's impossible to get this into policy. It's impossible to get this into big pharma or any of the research institutions or any of the big medical schools, because 200 kids, like you said, money talks, which is the reason why I started Compassiviste. I started Compassiviste, the word I put together, it means compassionate activist. And that's what we do, right? I mean, if you don't act from compassion, then what are you acting for? So I want to ask you this. How's compassion shaped your leadership and the community that's grown around your foundation, like the friends you have, the people attending the galas, the people actually stepping up to the plate for you here? People you didn't even think of would be that involved.
It's 100% of the drive.
Compassion is all the way.
Yeah.
Everything is compassion there.
Compassion, because hope is in there. The humanistic desire to help, compassion, help. I think it's 100% of the drive.
And you think if we were able to raise this compassion, I mean, that's kind of what you're doing, right? You're trying to go out there and raise the compassion so that there's one less disease that we have to think about, especially when it comes to children.
Yes.
And raise the compassion in people.
Compassion my entire life. I've always been involved in helping the underdog. Mm-hmm. There was a Boys and Girls Club, an art center, a baseball organization, community baseball organization. I've always been involved in things like that. I just wish everybody could be that way. And it doesn't take a lot of money or a lot of time. Sometimes it just takes a few seconds to write a check.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what? Given the money, I'm with you there. It takes nothing to donate, and if you can be a part of the organization, if you care about it and be a part of it, I mean, volunteer, go sign up, call people. You listen to this podcast or you hear about John, you're like, oh, I feel for this. Call them up, say, hey, look, I've got Wednesday afternoons. Can I come there, do something? Can I whatever sweep the floors? Can I do whatever? Right? Yep. I mean, there's always some ways you can help. It doesn't always have to be write a check either. So, I really, that's what I always tell people. I tell them, be involved in any way that you can within your community, within your neighborhood. And if it's a distant thing, but you have that philanthropic heart for this situation, be involved with your checkbook, like you said. Now, what's a common misconception that you want to get out there? Because I want people to, I want to break through these myths and misconceptions a little bit through our talks, right? And in this situation with you, what have you found that has kind of had you shake your head, say, "Oh my God, I can't believe people say that or think that"?
When our first survivor, who was at the gala, was spoken about, some people actually said she probably didn't have DIPG. That's pretty sad. But she did. And we're fortunate that she is a survivor.
And when she survived, is she healthy now?
Yeah.
It's something that, she's overcome completely?
Completely is not a word we can use now. Okay. We can say that if she died at 90.
Okay, but fair enough.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know the tumor.
You know what? I say that often because my mom had breast cancer twice. And I always ask the doctor, is it completely done now? And the doctor says to me, completely is when, she passes away. And if it wasn't from the cancer, then we say completely. And if it
Yeah.
was from the cancer, then we say no.
He dies of natural causes, then
Right.
it's a complete recovery.
And this falls under that category.
We're optimistic. I would trade anything to have my son 12, 13 years.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we're doing besides producing survivors is producing longer term survivors.
Mm.
So instead of 3 to 9 months, they're living 3 years, 4 years. And that's with good quality life as well. So that's a plus. So yeah, that's the only misconception I've ever come across.
So the misconception is really people thinking the person who survived didn't really survive, they just didn't have it, meaning that people just don't believe the cure's there, kind of.
It's people do that because they're so angry that their child didn't survive. And I understand why they would say that.
This is in the context of your environment, right? This is in the global context. This is a context of people who are there who, 9 out of 10 have lost their child, and that one person.
Right. But I kind of understand their bitterness and their angriness. I, on the other hand, embrace great news and and I don't really particularly care if a cure came from our true medical partners or someone else's medical partners. I just want a cure to come. That's it.
That's a good mindset too. Some people, like you said, they get stuck in anger, they get stuck in grief. They can't see the positivity in it. I love that you're positive about it. I love that you're really only doing it for improving other people's lives. Because at this point, for you,
my son's gone. There's nothing.
That's over, right? For you, that's over.
Although the foundation is named after him, if you ever attend an event, nothing's ever spoken about when it comes to him. This is not about him. This is about every other child who's in the fight right now. I don't make it about my son. It's named after him.
Right.
But it's about every other child that is in the fight. I didn't even mention my son in this year's speech at all. Like I said, this is bigger than him. This is bigger than anyone. This is about who is in the battleground right now. Who is fighting?
And John, at this point, every child you're fighting for is also partly your child.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
Well,
so
I tell you, I get very close to some of these kids. And I tried hard not to, but it's almost impossible.
I can imagine.
Because it does. In the beginning, when I got close to them and they passed away, it took a profound toll on me. And so I intentionally distanced myself from the actual communication in a personal format. But that changed about 5-6 years ago. I had no other choice but to jump in and help certain kids. And it was inevitable. And I'm coping with it a lot differently now. So, and even if I wasn't coping with it differently, I have an obligation.
God bless you for all of that. Now, let me ask you this. How does our audience become a part of what you are doing? You mentioned funding is the key interest here, because sometimes I speak to organizations and they don't even mention funding. They say, you know what, we're funded, but we just don't have enough people to support the causes that we have. Sometimes they say, we have enough funding to say, keep the lights on, but to accelerate what we're doing, we need researchers, we need people we can't pay, we can't afford to pay, we need funding for that. Everybody has a different need. How does the audience become a part of the cure for you?
I would like to send you like a slide that has the website on it, and they could see our videos and our mission video, our gala videos, And all the information on getting involved is on the website, as well as all the events that they can get involved. Like, for instance, we do a walk, and we have virtual walkers all over the world register. So you don't literally have to be at the site of the walk. You do it virtually. And so those are the ways that people can help. And then if someone has the ability to help with research, I would patch them into our medical partners and they'll connect with them.
So doctors for research, funding to progress the research, and the good work of support that you're doing for the families and people to just be a part of what you're doing.
Yeah.
We will for sure put all of this down on the episode, and everybody can reach out and find you, the website, and get a hold of you. And, they can go on the website directly and donate. If there's more to it, they can go on the website and contact you and get a hold of you to support the organization.
Yeah, I appreciate it. This was awesome.
Yeah, I have one last question. If you were to leave the audience with one key takeaway from this conversation, what would you want to tell the audience?
DIPG and any other childhood or pediatric type of illnesses are just not acceptable. It's not natural to bury your child. It's just not acceptable.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. Like I said, I've been there twice, and everything about it is unnatural. Even when you go to the funeral, it's unnatural. Even the size of the casket, everything's so unnatural about it that it just should never happen.
Yeah.
It should just never happen. It is. And,
this was great to be on your podcast, and hopefully, you let me know when this airs. I'd love to watch it, and this is going to be great.
For sure.
Thank you for giving me a platform to tell a story.
You're always welcome here, John. And we're going to do what we can to support your cause as well through our own inner circle.
Based out of Canada?
No, we're based out of the UK, but we're global. So we are in the US, we're in Latin America. We have a strong presence in Latin America. And we also are in Europe and the Middle East. So I will, of course, tap into our inner circles as well and see how we can come back and support the Cristian Rivera Foundation. So thank you, John Rivera, for speaking on Compassiviste Dialogues, and thank you for your altruism, using your eternal suffering to save others, and activism to fight for a better future for everybody. To our audience, please subscribe to Compassiviste Dialogues and share this episode so that we can get out there and help the Cristian Rivera Foundation hit the targets and get cure for DIPG. We're here to help change the world together. I'm Ali Horiat.